Welcome to the Success Samrat classes. In last session, we discussed about the executive and the legislative power of the President of India. Today, we are going to do the other powers provided to the President of India by the Constitution of India. Now, the first is the veto powers. Now, the question arises, what does the word veto means? Friends, the word veto means a constitutional right to reject a decision or proposal made by a law making body. So friends, until unless president give his assent to the bill, it cannot be used by the parliament. So there are certain veto powers given to the president of India by the Constitution of India. It is these are the absolute veto, the pocket veto, the suspensive veto, and the qualified veto. Now, friends, what is absolute veto? The power of absolute veto states that the president of India withholds his assent to a bill. It means he can completely reject it or he can ask for the reconsideration. This is called as absolute veto power. Now, second power is the power of pocket veto. In this power, president delay in giving the assent to a bill. He can take time to think. But we can say in simple words, he take time to think that he should or should not give the assent to the bill. Second is the suspensive veto. The suspensive veto is a power which can be overridden by the legislature with the ordinary majority. If if President of India exercises the suspensive veto power, in that case, the Parliament of India can override it by a simple majority. Now comes the last, the qualified veto. The qualified veto power can be easily overridden by the Parliament by higher majority. So the veto powers can be used by the President under certain limitations. In the case of absolute veto power, he can withhold his giving the assent to the bill. In the case of pocket veto power, he can take time. He can delay his giving in assent of the bill, assent to the bill. But in case of qualified and suspensive veto powers, here his veto powers are overridden by the legislature of India, that is Parliament of India. In case of suspensive veto, ordinary majority can supersede the power of suspensive veto, whereas in case of qualified veto, the Parliament need a higher majority to override it. Now, friends, the President of India does not enjoy all of the veto powers. The President of India has absolute, suspensive, pocket veto, not the qualified veto. Except qualified veto, President of India enjoys his absolute veto, pocket veto, and suspensive veto. The qualified veto and pocket veto is enjoyed by the President of America and suspensive veto by the President of France. The absolute veto power of the President of India is enjoyed in the case of state legislation, as it is not obligatory for the President to give his assent to a bill even if bill comes again after the reconsideration by the state legislature. Friends, it means in the case of absolute veto power, if a president sends a bill to the legislation for the reconsideration, and after reconsideration, the bill is again sent to the president to give his assent, he can reject it. This is all about absolute veto power. So, so there is no provision in the constitution for a for a direct disallowance of the state legislation by the president. But there is a provision for disallowance of such bills as reserved by the state by the by the state governor for the assent of the president. Now, the constitution does not clearly mention about the nature of the veto power of the president. So, friends, veto powers, in brief, we can say that veto power is a constitutional right to reject a decision or proposal made by the lawmaking body. In India, overall, the lawmaking body is the Parliament of India. So, so to be to have a edge over the Parliament, certain powers have been given to the President of India by the Constitution makers. These powers are called as veto powers. It is absolute veto power, pocket veto power, suspensive veto power, and qualified veto power. Except qualified veto power, absolute, pocket, and suspensive veto power is enjoyed by the President of India. In the case of absolute veto power, President withhold his assent to a bill. He may send the bill to to the legislation to reconsider it, and after reconsideration, he may or may not sign the bill. In case of pocket veto, President delays his assent to a bill. He takes time. This, we can say he takes time to consider it. In other words, in suspensive veto, if President suspends a bill, in that case, the Parliament with the simple majority can override his decision. So this is all about the veto powers. Now, what are the judicial and financial powers of the President of India? So far, the financial powers, President lays down the annual financial statement before the Parliament. That is the budget. It is laid by the President in the Parliament. Now, second term is the introduction of money bill. Money bill can only be introduced in the Parliament on the prior recommendation of the President of India. It comes under Article 110. If we have to withdraw the money from public accounts, Consolidated Fund of India, or even from the Contingency Fund of India, we need his prior recommendations. And money from the contingency fund can only be released when President of India sanction it. Without the sanctioning of President, any sanctioning or uh, without any sanctions or without any withdrawal sanction by the President of India, the government cannot withdraw the money from the Contingency Fund of India. President constitutes the Finance Commission of India after every 5 years. So overall, if we discuss about the powers of the President of India in terms of finance, he lays down before the Parliament the annual financial statement, that is the budget of India. Second, uh, money bill can only be introduced on the prior recommendation of the President of India. Third, money can only be withdrawn on the prior recommendation from public accounts and Consolidated Fund of India. In case of contingency fund, we required sanctioning from the President of India, and he constitutes the Finance Commission after every 5 years. So these are the financial powers of the President. Now come the judicial powers. What are the judicial powers? The first and the foremost important power is he appoints the Chief Justice of Supreme Court as well as the High Courts of the states. Under Article 143, he can seek the advice of the Chief Justice. He can seek the advice from the Chief Justice of India, but he is not bounded to it. Okay, so in other statement we can say the President of India can seek advice from the Supreme Court and on any question of law or fact. However, the advice tendered by the Supreme Court is not binding to the President of India. So, two important things that he appoints the Chief Justice of Supreme Court of India and High Courts of the state. Second, he can seek the advice of the Supreme Court in the case of the questioning of law or a fact. But that advice is President is not bounded to that advice. Now, under Article 72, there are certain power to grant, such as pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, and commutation. Now, what is what does the word pardon mean? In pardon, the president completely absolves offender from all the punishment. एक तरीके से in another terms we can say it may be like Shama Yachana, pardon. He pardons him. Second is reprieve. The word reprieve means cancel or postpone the punishment. So in reprieve, there is a stay on the execution of the sentence for the temporary period. In the case of respite, the word respite means a short period of rest or relief from something difficult or unpleasant. Here, in the case of respite, the president award less punishment on the special grounds. In case of remission, remission is the word remission means the cancellation of a debt, charge, or penalty. But here, in case of remission, there is a reduction of sentence without changing its character. In case of commutation, the word commutation means the action or process of committing a judicial process. So, the commutation means substitution of one form of punishment for other form in which is of the which is of a lighter character. It means so. What does the pardoning power mean? Pardoning power means that president completely absolves the punishment of the offender. He pardons him. In Hindi, we call it Shamadan ya Shama Yachana. In reprieve, there is a stay on execution of the sentence for a temporary period. For example, if there is a lacting mother who's feeding her baby, so she will be given a relaxation time to take care of her baby. Now, in case of respite, in respite, the president awards a lesser punishment on a special grounds. For example, if a person is handicapped, so his punishment is changed on the special grounds. He has been handicapped, he can't see, he can't, he's amputated. So but he has committed a crime. So he will given a punishment. It will be a bit different order. Second, remission. That is reduction of sentence without changing its character. In remission, for example, if a person is punished for 6 years, so his tenure will be reduced, but the conditions will not change. This come under remission. And in commutation, there is a substitution of one form of punishment by the lighter form. So these are the judicial powers of the president. Now, president is the only authority for pardoning of a death sentence. Only President of India can pardon a death sentence. The governor has the power to suspend, remit, or commute a death sentence under circumstances under the Indian Penal Code and Criminal Procedure. This means, as a whole, only President of India can pardon for a death sentence, though Governor of state can pardon, but it has to be under circumstances under Indian Penal Code and Criminal Procedure Code. The president can commute, suspend, or remit the sentence for a person who are convicted of any offense, such as the court martial, an offense against any law relating to any matter, an offense against any law relating to any matter to which executive power of the union extends, and in all cases in which the sentence is death. So, the object of conferring the judicial powers on the president is to correct the possible judicial error, because no judicial system can be free from errors as it is made by human. So the overview of the judicial power is that if by mistake there has been some punishment given, so it can be fixed by President of India for to removing or to or changing the nature of the punishment. The President of India has been granted the pardoning powers or the power of to grant under Article 72. So Article 72 is very important as per competitive purpose, because in this president can fix the errors in a judgment given by the court through pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, and commutation. So these are the judicial powers of the President of India. Now, diplomatic and military powers. In terms of military power, the President is the Supreme Commander of Defense of India. He appoints the Chief of Army, Navy, and Air Force, and he exercises his power as regulated by law under Article 53. So now the question comes, what is the Article 53 says? Now, the Article 53 says that the executive power of the Union or the executive powers of the Union shall be vested in the President, exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him, who will who give aid and advice to the President for the exercise of the powers. So this means the President is a direct, or President is the supreme commander of the defense, but for appointing the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Air Staff, or Air Marshal, he has to consider, or he has to seek advice from the subordinate officers such as the Prime Minister of India. In the case of diplomatic powers, President of India represents the country in international forums as well as affairs. He receives the ambassadors of different countries and diplomats from the different countries. He negotiates and concludes the treaties and international agreements without the intervention of the parliament. These are the diplomatic powers of the President of India. Now, the emergency and ordinance making power of the President. So, what are emergency powers? If in case of there is the failure of machinery, maybe the constitutional machinery, defense machinery, or rebellion by the people, then President controls the entire nation by the action of emergency. This emergency come under Article 352, 356, 365, and 360. Under Article 352, the emergency called as the national emergency. The national emergency arises out of war, external aggression, or armed rebellion. In the case of Article 356 and 365, it is it's called as the president rule. The president rule is applied in a particular region due to failure of the constitutional machinery, or the president's rule is an emergency due to the failure of the constitutional machinery in a state. And under Article 360, it's come here is the financial emergency. So here the president controls the machinery by using these emergency powers. Now, Article 123. Article 123 states about the ordinance making power of the president. Now, what is ordinance? Ordinance means an authoritarian order. It means the order that are released by the President of India. When can be an ordinance be issued? The ordinance can only be issued when either of the houses or both the houses of the parliament are not in session, and the president is satisfied that the circumstances which exist, the circumstances which exist, there's an immediate need to take some certain actions. So, ordinance is presented to the president, or ordinance is presented by the president. This power is exercised on the advice of Council of Ministers. Therefore, it is not in his individual satisfaction. It is the most important legislative power of the president. So it means if the parliament is not in session, or if either of the house is not in session, and if a condition arises that there is a need of certain important rules to control or to hold that situation, then ordinance power of the president comes into action. This power, the ordinance making power of the president, is not to his personal satisfaction, but this power is used on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So now, the ordinance issued by the president have same impact or force as the act of a parliament. Therefore, ordinance may be retrospective and may amend or repeal any law or act of parliament of a previous ordinance itself. The ordinance must be laid before both the houses of the parliament and shall cease to uh, operate at the expiry of 6 weeks from the date of reassembly of the parliament. So the life of the ordinance is of 6 weeks. Now, so there to the uh, emergency powers, president controls the condition of president control a nation, and through ordinance making power, president controls a particular situation. Now, miscellaneous and discretionary powers of the president. So, what are the discretionary powers of the president? The discretionary powers, such as first, in selecting the prime minister from among the contenders when no single party attains majority after the election of the Lok Sabha. If election is conducted, of general elections have been conducted, and no party has got the majority, then president has got a right to call a person to form a government. Second, the exercise of pocket veto in which he takes time to sign a bill, to give his assent to a bill. It's up to the discretionary power of the president. Disqualifying a member of legislature when council's advice is not taken. किसी भी मेंबर को हटा सकते हैं, उसको डिस्क्वालीफाई कर सकते हैं, उसमें काउंसिल की एडवाइस लेने की जरूरत नहीं है, काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर की. In this case, it comes under the discretionary powers up to the president. It is up to the discretion of the president to disqualify a member. And last is, it is up to discretionary power. It is up to the discretion of the president that he wants or he returns the bill to the parliament for the reconsideration. So the discretionary power it is of the president means that it is up to the president to take a decision. If the party doesn't get a complete majority to whom he has to call to form a government, if members to disqualify a member in the parliament of the parliament in the case of bill to consider for the reconsideration by the Parliament of India, or in case of using pocket veto. These all are the use. These all up to the discretion of the President of India.